All right, Hannah. So you are our new athletic therapist here at Elevate, and you have a very unique and interesting story
Mhm.
that I'd like to get into.
Okay.
But I want to scratch my own itch first.
Okay.
You're a long distance runner.
Yeah.
I tolerate running at best.
Mhm.
I have never gotten that runner's high. Have you ever gotten runner's high?
I have. It doesn't happen every time. I have gone a few times, and
Okay.
it's
What
just
does it feel like?
it just feels like it's kind of like a euphoric state. Like you have this sense of calmness. You feel like you can just keep going forever. And you don't really want to stop. You're kind of in your own world. Um, it's like when you finish a workout and you just have like that state of like happiness. You kind of feel more calm, relaxed. Most people like have that at some point in their life, but it doesn't happen every time you run. It can be after like a hard workout. It can be during a run. Um, but it's just like a nice like calm
So it's like
state.
you're in the zone type of thing?
Yeah, kind of. You kind of like forget about everything around you.
Is it because running is like that? It's just constant repetition, and
Yeah, part of it's like the rhythmic state you put yourself in. Once you get like a good flow into your run, you just like don't have to think about anything, and that's kind of when it sets in.
so how far after the sucky part? Because I always find that there's this peak of suckiness
Mhm.
when you're running, and is it you just got to get over that, and then it becomes just better?
Yeah, like I find that it's about 1.5K into my runs that I get to that point. Some people say like 5K, some people say 100 meters. It'll be different for everyone.
Okay,
Some people just won't experience that, and
I've
that's
never had
okay
that.
too. But usually it's like more into your running journey once you've gone past the like being unfit part.
Okay,
Once you like, I'd say like at least a month into like starting running, before you will actually get that sensation.
and what's the like? Is there science behind it? What's the like physiological reason for
There
runner's
is
high?
there is science behind it. So usually when you exercise, it's not specifically running. You have a release of endorphins, you have a release of dopamine, your stress like lowers, and just you get a sense of happiness. However, I haven't done too much research into the science of it, so I don't want to like stick to my claims too hard. But it is like the dopamine and the endorphin release.
So for you, is that what keeps you coming back to running? Like why? Running is very interesting to me
Yeah.
because I don't get it. I appreciate it. I think for me, I'm way too much in my head throughout the day that when I go work out, I do not want to be in my head anymore. So I
Yeah.
want to escape that. What is it? What is it for you? What keeps you running?
Running is my escape. Um, when I go for a run, I feel like I'm able to escape the world, escape all my anxieties, escape my to-do list for the
See,
day.
that's so interesting because for me, it's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
To me, I'm like running through my to-do list. Oh, what do I got to do? What are my tasks? And I'm strategizing, right?
Yeah.
So
Some
for you, you
yeah.
enjoy that aspect of it.
Yeah, some people find it's really hard to like calm their mind while they're running. Sometimes I do get stressed about like, oh my gosh, like this is exhausting today and I don't want to do this. But once I get a little bit into the run, I feel a lot better and I'm able to separate myself from like my life and like my running life. So when I was in college, I was being on the cross country team was a huge relief for me. Being able to step away from school, focus on other things. Um, I just for some reason it lets me clear my head. I understand like some people it's too much time to themselves and they might
That's me, yeah.
get their thoughts going a lot faster. But I always find it's a lot better to just ease my mind, take it off my daily tasks.
Do you like when you're running, especially long distance, because you have the
Mhm.
time to do this? Are you bouncing back and forth between like those personal tasks and I guess working through stuff in your head and the performance piece, or does it flip flop back and forth? Or are you always in like you're looking at your mileage and your pace and cadence and all that?
I try not to focus on my pace, however, it does happen. But usually I'm able to separate myself from like other thoughts completely. I'm fully thinking about running. Sometimes it's, oh my gosh, this sucks and I don't want to be running. Should I stop? Sometimes it's like, okay, this is amazing. Like, this makes me so happy. So my thoughts will change, but usually I'm able to stick it running related. Um, when I'm like leading up to a race, sometimes I get stressed out, like second guessing my abilities. But again, it's still separate from like my regular life, and I really like having that separation.
Do you remember your first race?
No, I actually don't.
Really?
I started running when I was in grade 4.
Okay.
I joined like my school cross country team. I sucked. That's all I remember. Like I was so disappointed that I was like couldn't run the whole thing. It was probably like a kilometer. But other than that, I'm not too sure what it was like.
So what made you go into running in that fourth grade?
My friends were doing it. I just
Pure
wanted to like,
pressure.
be part of
Good.
the
Sometimes
pack.
pure pressure is a
Yeah.
good thing.
Yeah, for sure. And then after that, like a year later, I just randomly asked my parents to join our local track club. They thought I was crazy, but I did it, and I've been running consistently ever
So your
since.
parents aren't runners?
Not at
No.
all.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a figure skater growing up, and they were like fully supportive of that. Did not understand the running aspect, and they still don't.
And at some point, you ended up at Elevate.
Mhm.
How did that happen?
Yeah, so I had a pretty significant ankle injury a couple of years ago. I had a high ankle sprain. I had an avulsion fracture. Um, I wasn't able to train fully. So with my doctor and my athletic therapist, I came up with a plan that I had to like decrease my load from running, and I suggested trying to find somewhere with an anti-gravity treadmill. And so I did a little Google search, and Elevate was the closest place. So I decided
Probably
to
the
try
only
it.
place.
Yeah, I'd have to go downtown Toronto, and I
Yeah.
was not dealing with that.
They have an older model. They're not that good.
Yeah, I heard it doesn't even work, so it's fine. But yeah, that brought me here, and I met you, and I met Ben, and I've been here ever since.
So you were here when I guess Ben first started.
Yeah, he was interning before he
Okay.
went to athletic therapy school.
Okay, perfect.
Mhm.
How did you know about the anti-gravity treadmill? Because I find that a lot of people, especially in Canada,
Mhm.
don't know that it exists.
Yeah.
In the States, it's much more prevalent. There's a lot more knowledge about it. Like,
Mhm.
how did you come across it?
Just researching. I was researching different ways that I could stay in training. I'm a big person that like supports cross training, even for people that are healthy. But I wanted to find the best way to train to mimic what I was doing in the races. So I wanted to be able to do something like running. I find that the elliptical isn't similar enough that I wouldn't be able to like completely replicate the workouts I want the way I wanted to. So after doing a lot of like Google searching, didn't read that many articles about it, but I came across the anti-gravity treadmill. There's some other systems that use like a resistance band type attachment that kind of lifts you up,
Yeah,
but the Ultra G is definitely the best way to go.
and yeah, because the other ones, it's like these. For people who don't know, they're like these bands that are attached to your waist, and they
Yeah.
literally like fling you up,
Yeah.
which is difficult to manipulate your body weight. You're kind of
Mhm.
guessing, whereas with this thing, it's 1% increments that you can adjust your body weight, right?
Yeah, and this one you can specifically tailor to your needs. The other one you can like put the resistance bands on, but you're not calculating exactly like what percent of your body weight is like coming off.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a guesstimation. But here it's a lot more scientific. You can go down to like the very like specific metrics to get what you want.
And the other one is the water treadmill, right?
Yes.
Which will reduce your body weight, but you're not going to be running marathons in the water.
Exactly.
So the water also gives you a resistance,
Mhm.
right? Which you're not going to get
Yeah, and it's
with running.
also like very hard to find those now. Like my school used to have one, and I was waiting for them to like open it back up after COVID, and they just decided not to because of the different expenses that come with it. But yeah, those are hard to come across too, and I'm not the biggest fan of swimming. I don't like to be in the water that much, so not the best
So
option.
no
for me.
triathlons for Hannah.
Not at all.
No. Okay. What was the most difficult part of your recovery?
Definitely the mental aspect. Just like knowing that I'm not able to run, knowing that I can't train the same ways that my teammates do, that my competitors do. That was really hard because I felt like I was falling behind. Also not having that same like mental break from the world. Like I really use it to help with my mental health. And for me, cross training doesn't do as good of a job at separating that from me. So the physical like aspect, that wasn't too hard. Like I knew what the plan was, I knew what I needed to do, but that mental battle of like second guessing yourself, doubting if you can even make a return, thinking that I wouldn't be able to compete ever again, that was really tough.
And how did you overcome that? Like, what are some of the strategies that you used to push through, right? Because every time you were in here,
Yeah.
despite all of the injuries,
Mhm.
I'm like, oh my God, Hannah's such a positive person. Every time she comes in here, it's like, hey, I just met with my surgeon and this was the bad news, and you just said it with a smile on your face, which
Yeah.
I was like, okay, there's got to be a strategy to this.
Yeah.
How did you get through that?
Yeah, I just really like to focus on what I can control. Like, obviously, I can't control that I'm already injured. I can't control that I can't run. But what can I do to help myself? What can I do to move forward from this? So I focus on those positive aspects, on what I can control. And that way, like, I don't get stuck in the rut of, like, being in that mental cycle where you just, like, are hating on yourself. You're, like, so frustrated that you can't keep doing what you can do. So it's like, okay, what can I do? I can run on the Alter G treadmill. I can bike. I could use the elliptical. I can have a good diet so that I'm not falling behind on my nutrition, which affects my training. I also was seeing a sports psychologist for a while. A lot of people are scared to do that. They don't want to admit that they need a little bit extra help, but there's nothing wrong with doing that. The sports psychologist helped me like reframe my thinking from like hating on myself to, okay, what can I do? Where can I go from here?
Was that before the injury or like afterwards? Because some athletes, right, they'll
Yeah.
use it as like a like a almost like a preventative
Mhm.
type of thing, right? To build mental toughness and resilience and from a performance standpoint, right?
Yeah. So I did start seeing one after an injury. So like I've had 3 ankle surgeries. 2 of them were before I came here to Elevate. And after my second ankle surgery, I was really struggling with the mental side of things. And so my athletic therapist had recommended I go see a sports psychologist. And I didn't look back. I saw him for about a year. Um, then like I went a different path, but all the strategies that he like gave to me weren't just helpful for the injury side of things, but the performance, my daily life, like in school, as a practitioner, I was able to use the same skills in the different aspects.
What were some of those strategies? Did they focus more on like visualizations? Was it more, yeah, like what did they help you with in terms of one task or tool that they gave you
Yeah.
that worked really well?
We did do a little bit of visualization work. One of the things he did was talk about like imagine yourself running and just visualize that. And we talk about like visualizing myself being able to run with no pain because I was scared to return to running after my one surgery. So visualization helped with that aspect. But instead of that, for other things, usually just like talking through what can I do? Why is like a certain thing bugging me so much? Why can't I get it out of my head? And it was just like someone to talk with to get through the really tough thoughts that I was having.
Okay, nice. And that's a huge one, right? Because working with athletes, and you obviously don't just work with runners, you work with all different types of athletes, right? Um, from my experience working with athletes, I've seen more people cry on like the ice, the field, the court than I could count,
Yeah.
right? So we have these frameworks around what an athlete is, and we put them on these pedestals, right? Whether they're professional or not, we kind of put them on these pedestals that are like, oh my God, they're like super resilient and focused and tough and all that, which they very well are, right? Or can be, but they're also the most sensitive people out there, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that they tie their identity to their sport, right? They love doing their sport and it becomes a part of their identity. So then when that gets taken away from something that they can't control, they're also control freaks, by the way,
Yeah.
right? And that identity gets taken away from them, and then they're just lost, right?
Yeah. And that was happening with me too. Like I have identified myself as a runner for so long. Like I've been running for 12 years now. And not being able to run, I kind of like forgot who I was outside of that. So I had to like really think like, okay, what do I enjoy outside of running? Like, who am I as a person? Because when I go talk to people, like usually I talk about running at some point. It's a major part of my life. So I kind of had to like dig deeper into me to find who I truly was. So it was a bit of a journey to figure that out. And a lot of athletes deal with the same thing. Like they just feel like they lost themselves or have lost themselves when they get injured, have to take a break, and they just don't know what to do.
Yeah, and the pros are just like us,
Yeah.
right? They're no different. They're just in the spotlight, right?
Mhm.
When I was in school, I looked at like, remember when Tiger Woods kind of had his whole fallout back in the day? Well, I kind of looked at him and I was like, oh man, like why are you going through all this? Just kind of retire. You could open up a school anywhere and just teach golf for the rest of your life, and you'll have the money. You'll be fine, right?
Yeah.
But then as I started analyzing a little bit more and exploring this identity thing, I was like, oh my God, that's totally the wrong way to think about it, right? He wants to come back to that sport under his own terms, not just, oh, it got taken away from an injury. He wants to come back, even if he's not the top of his game anymore. It's still an awesome comeback story, and and that's just being an athlete is like, here's your next goal that you have to hit, right? It's not winning a Masters, it's now getting back to play at the Masters, right? So yeah,
Athletes are very like goal driven. Like they're used to like constantly going after a new goal. Once they achieve that, they have like 5 more goals set. So it's always something that they're working towards. So sometimes they have trouble finding things to work towards when they're not able to do their sport. And you really have to think about like, what in my life do I want to do? Especially at the pro level, because it's not just them thinking that's their life. Everyone in the world looking in on them think that's their whole life too. So I really think that they need to show who they are as a person outside of that.
yeah, we put these athletes on a pedestal, but that also dehumanizes them in a way,
Exactly.
right? Because we think that we can yell at the TV or send mean things to them on Twitter or whatever, and they won't get affected. Like they get affected by that,
Yeah, definitely.
and I always like just laugh at people who criticize athletes like that, like, oh my God, they should have scored that goal, or they should have whatever made that putt, and it's like I'm just like, you try doing that. That's actually really hard.
Yeah, humans too, like treat them with respect.
Yeah.
And some people forget that. They
Yeah.
just act like they're robots on the
Yeah.
court or the field or whatever.
It's like nobody comes to your job and starts yelling at you for poor performance, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody has good and bad days, right? So, I'm curious, with your experience with all of your injuries, how has that shaped you as a therapist? Because now you're on the other side of, I guess, the treatment table in a way,
Yeah.
right? How has that shaped how you approach dealing with your patients today?
It's made me a lot more adaptable to my patients. So you have good days and you have bad days as a patient, as a practitioner. And you can't always go along the course of treatment that you expect. If they have a bump in the road, whether that's a physical issue or if it's a mental side of things, you need to adjust your plans to help them in that day. Sometimes they just feel mentally defeated, and the purpose of the rehab session will be more helping them regain their confidence, explaining what we're doing so they understand where they're going to go from here, because sometimes they feel like they're not making any progress. So having some tangible objectives to work towards can be helpful. But you really just have to adapt it to how they're feeling that day, mentally and physically. And just made me understand the mental side of it. Everyone can kind of see the physical aspects, but you don't understand the mental battles that the patients go through throughout their injuries, especially when it's something chronic long term.
Because sometimes what'll happen is therapists will get very textbook in, oh my God, this is step 1, this is step 2, I have to do this assessment and then this treatment and then
Yeah.
the phases of healing and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But sometimes someone might walk in and I think you have to actually pick up on their energy and ask them hey, is everything okay? Are you, what are you
Yeah.
dealing with today? And then the plan for that day can completely shift and go out the window, and you have to be really adaptable really quickly, so that, it might just be a talking session,
Yeah.
like, because that's what they need that day, right?
For sure. And sometimes people won't be willing to share that side of it. Some patients feel ashamed that they're having a mental struggle and don't want to share it with their therapist, but you have to be really good at reading people for that reason. If you know something's not up, like not going the way that it should, they're not acting how they normally do, then you might have to dig into that deeper. Obviously, still respecting their boundaries, but that's when you start asking questions about how they're feeling, like outside of the physical aspects, because they might not be comfortable sharing it openly.
Yeah, and that goes to really knowing your athletes and your patient,
Yeah,
right?
for
Like
sure.
really, really knowing them. Does this person like to talk about their injury and or work through it, or do they want to talk about anything other than their injury to try to distract them from that, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, so building that trust, I think, is super, super important.
Yeah, and it definitely takes time to do that. Like the first and second time you see them, you're probably not going to know, but the more you see them, the easier it gets, because everyone will have a slightly different personality.
So with dealing with athletes, I think it's a little bit easier to build that trust because, you're at the games, you're at the practices, there's a lot of downtime,
Yeah.
other than like before and after the sport. Um, they get a lot of maintenance care, right? So I think it's easier to build that trust. How do you then go and build that trust with like a recreational athlete, or maybe somebody that doesn't even do any types of sports or activities, and maybe they're just like their sport is like gardening, right?
Yeah, if it's like more of a general population person or someone I'm just not working with in the field, it's more about just getting to know them as a person. Some practitioners will only talk about the injury, but it's important to talk about their daily lives, what they enjoy doing, what their like family dynamics are, what they do from day to day can really be helpful. Finding out what their hobbies are, their interests, really getting to know them more personally, and that can help break down the barriers.
Yeah, the shows that they watch on Netflix, for example,
Exactly.
right? Like just
And
things like
gives-
that,
Yeah,
right?
and it gives you like a conversation point for the coming appointments. Just like show them that you actually care about them as a person, not just as a like injured body.
Yeah, it's just like we're dehumanizing the athletes in a way. Sometimes therapists will dehumanize the patient, and they'll just think of them as the patient instead of like the
Yeah.
person in front of them that,
Mhm.
like we always say, like, do all these exercises. It's like, well, you know what? Sometimes that's not possible because there's a list of 12 exercises that you want them to do every day, but they have, soccer practice, and they got like 3 kids, they're running around, they got their job, and
Yeah, and unless you start asking them those personal questions,
you won't know.
You're not going to know, and then you'll wonder why like there's no progress being made. But they don't have time at home to do these exercises. You need to make it very personalized to them, not just what like the textbook says. Like you have to make it okay. They only have like 10 minutes in their day to do exercises. What are the most important things to give them? What will they be motivated to do? Sometimes I'll even sit down with my patients and we'll make a schedule of their week and see where they can fit it in. If we know they're going to be mentally drained one day, they're not going to do their exercises, so why try to force them to do that? You have to help them in a way that you know will work.
So you end up being like a coach in a way.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Now, when you first came here, did you ever think that you were going to work here?
Honestly, the first time I left here, I'm like, this would be an amazing place to work. And then
So you planted the seed. I knew what you were doing. Okay.
And then about like a month after, like I started here, I had met all the practitioners, and I just really liked the community. I liked the vibe of the clinic. Just everyone's very easygoing, energetic. They really like to work with each other, and I like that aspect. I also really thought that technology, like the anti-gravity treadmill, is pretty cool. But it's definitely been in my head. And then going into like my last semester of school last year, I'm like, oh, I wish there was space for me, but I thought it was too busy and I was too scared to ask. But this is definitely like my dream clinic to be at.
I remember that day where you're kind of beating around the bush, and I was like, Hannah, do you want to work here? And it was just as
Yeah.
simple as asking. That's
Yeah.
it. So no, we're really happy to have you here, and That was, think of your treatment session as like the longest job interview ever,
Yeah.
right? Because at that day it was just like, yeah, it's a no-brainer. Yeah,
Yeah.
you should work here. Absolutely. You fit
Yeah,
the
like we
team.
already knew each other pretty well.
Yeah.
So it was more like, is there space for me?
Yeah, yeah.
Figuring that out, and it worked out really well.
Tell me about some of the field stuff that you're working on.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of field work. My favorite sport to work with right now is rugby. I work with Mississauga Blues, Oakville Crusaders, and I've done a little bit of work with the Ontario Blues, which is the provincial team. Currently, I'm working with a football team in Oakville, just youth athletes, 14 and under. But definitely my favorite is rugby. I like the adrenaline rush that happens there. You get to run onto the field. There's no stop and play, so it feels like you're part of the team. I have got run into once, but it's okay. I was fine. And I do a little bit of work with soccer too. But my favorite population to work with is runners. So currently I'm working with Laurier Brantford's cross country team, both in the field during the races and in the clinic. And it's nice to work with a population that I can really relate to.
So let's get into runners. But before that, I wanted to ask you a really common question that we get is, what is the difference between athletic therapists and physiotherapists?
That can be a hard question to answer. Athletic therapists and physical therapists are very similar in many aspects. What it really comes down to is athletic therapists, training is focused on the musculoskeletal system, where physical therapists also have training like respiratory, neuro, other aspects. But when we're working in the sports medicine setting, clinically, basically the same thing.
Same textbooks,
Yeah,
right?
same textbooks, same tests, same assessments, everything's pretty much the same. Where it really stands out is the field aspect. So we have training in emergency care, sideline assessments. We're the first people on the field when athletes get injured. So we have to be able to quickly do assessments right then and there. We also get more training in taping. Like I said, we give emergency care, so we're all first responders, meaning there's a spinal injury, we can take care of it right there on the field before the paramedics even show up. We can do CPR, deal with medical emergencies such as diabetic episodes, seizures, all the things like that.
Yeah, so if anybody's, when you're watching sports, Leafs, right, Raptors, the person that goes out onto the court when there's an injury,
they're an athletic therapist.
they're an athletic therapist,
Yeah.
right? And are the Leafs going to win the cup this year? Are you planning the parade, Hannah?
I hope they don't.
You hope they don't. Okay.
I'm not a Leafs fan.
Explain. I don't care either way, but
I'm obligated to cheer for the Habs.
okay.
That's my boyfriend's favorite team, and if I want things to go smoothly,
You can't buy a Leafs jersey then. Oh, okay.
No. And then we also cheer for the Winnipeg Jets because that's his hometown.
Okay.
But I'm not super into hockey, so I just go with the flow.
I have a theory about the Maple Leafs, and the theory is, I don't think MLSC actually wants them to win, because I think hope, just having that hope, brings in a lot of money.
Oh, that's so true.
Because every year there's a parade that's being planned that never happens, right? Jerseys are getting sold, tickets are getting sold, because they're basically just selling you hope. That's it.
Yeah.
So that's my theory.
All the fans, across Ontario, even Canada, they're determined that this is the Leafs.
This is the year, yeah.
And it never happens. And I don't think it will happen.
But we still have hope. So
Yes.
let's get back into runners. What is the number one mistake you see people make when they're first starting to get into running, right? Because I feel like running there's such a low barrier of entry. You just buy some shoes and you just go run, right?
Almost everyone's capable of going for a run.
Right? So what's the number one mistake you see people make when they make that decision to start running?
The biggest mistake is probably jumping into training too quickly. You just start running 5K every day, you're going to get injured. Your training's not going to go well. You need to gradually increase the mileage you're doing. So first run, start with a kilometer. Then take a day off. Then you need to slowly build that up. It's commonly known as the 10% rule. You don't want to increase your weekly running mileage by more than 10%, or else you're increasing your risk of injury. Your body's not used to taking that much impact. It's like repetitive plyometric work, basically. So you're constantly putting that stress on your body. If your body's not conditioned to that, then things are going to fall apart real fast.
Is there a plateau? Because I would equate it to like being in the gym, and let's just say it's a bench press, right?
Yeah.
There's no way you could add 10% every week,
No.
right? What would you say for like beginner runners is that like plateau where you would say, look, once you get to like, I don't know, 5K or something like that, stick to 5K for I don't know, a month or whatever. What would you say that is?
Yeah, the 5K mark is actually a really good place to like plateau at. It will be a little bit different for every person. Everyone's able to handle different demands. But once you reach that 5K mark, train at that for a bit. You don't want all your runs to be at 5 kilometers either. You can do a few shorter runs throughout the week. But start there, like take a few weeks, don't increase your training. You can even like lower the amount of mileage you're doing for a week, deload a bit, and then start increasing again. Again, it'll be different for every person, but you'll kind of get the sense if your body is feeling like extra tired or you're having aches and pains pop up, then you're probably doing too much too soon.
Do you know my running story, Hannah?
The 10K?
The 10K story? Yeah.
Yes, I have heard it.
So for people who don't know, when I was in like second year university, I decided, I think I got peer pressured into I can't remember if it was a 5 or a 10K. I think it was a 10K. And I said, yeah, sure, whatever, let's do a 10K. And zero training. I did not train for it one bit. I did not run beforehand. I played hockey. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cardio. Like I should be fine.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. I about a week before, I was like, let me just go for a run and see how far I get before I get tired. And I think a few kilometers into it, I got this crazy sharp pain on the side of my knee, and I was like, oh, I better slow down and just stop and just rest up before the race. And then the race day came, and it was miserable. It was drizzly. Like I hated it. It was so bad. Which apparently you love that kind of weather for running.
Yeah,
That's weird.
Running in rain is like my favorite thing ever.
Okay.
Very unpopular opinion.
Anyways, I get to this event, and I'm just hoping, praying that my knee doesn't start hurting. 2 kilometers in, it is like agony. And I just like limped the entire run. And then that was my last ever run that I did. And then afterwards, I guess the next year, I actually learned what my injury was. And it was all mechanical.
Yeah.
All mechanical.
A lot of people that are starting out running, they don't realize like they probably aren't running properly. Everyone's like, oh, like I've been running my whole life, like I play this sport or I'm in gym class. But if you're a hockey player, your mechanics are going to be very different in hockey than running. You need to retrain your body how to move in the proper way for running. And sometimes it's actually your footwear that's causing those faulty mechanics.
What are some mechanical faults that you see in people, either novice runners or actually experienced runners?
Yeah. One of the most common things is overstriding. So when your like legs reaching in front of you while you run, you're supposed to like land directly below your body when you're taking impact to the ground. Some people will overreach, and that puts a lot more stress on their body, especially their posterior chain. But it's also going to cause more of a jarring sensation, like jarring force through your body. You're a lot more stiff in that position too, so that can cause a lot of issues. Whereas if you run or you land below your body, you're able to like absorb the force easier and propel from there. Another common thing I see is people's feet overpronating, which is basically like your foot turning to the inside while you're walking or running.
So it's like your arch collapsing.
Yeah, your arch is collapsing when you're doing that. And that puts stress like on the medial side of your ankle, the inside of your ankle, the inside of your shin. That can cause issues in your ankles, knees, hips, back. It just works its way up, and those are the two most common things I see.
Yeah, and then that has certain implications with like muscle, right? Because if you're overstriding, right, you're like a running coach explained it to me this way, where you have to think about pushing the ground behind you as opposed to pulling the ground towards you.
Yeah.
Right? So if you could imagine that overstride, right? it's in
You have to
your foot's
pull.
in front of you. You have to pull, and then right get that next step.
Yeah, and that's not efficient. Your body has to go through a lot more work to do that. It's going to tire out easier when you run with your muscles fatigued. It can lead to injury, especially when your body's not conditioned to it. But it's a lot more stress in your body. You're making it work in a lengthened position, which isn't ideal. Whereas if you're pushing out from behind you, the muscles are able to produce greater force.
Yeah, because it's easier to generate force from a more shortened position than a lengthened.
Exactly.
So it's like picture like that holding like a really heavy textbook, in this position versus this position. You're gonna get tired way more in this position just because your bicep is lengthened, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's the same for running.
Yeah. Exact same thing.
Would a common injury is like shin splints, right? Or like hamstring issues, right? You get a lot of sprinters that get hamstring issues, and you get a lot of distance runners that get shin splints.
Yeah.
Would you say that's all mechanical, mostly mechanical?
Mostly mechanical, especially the shin splints. Again, a lot of the times it actually comes from the footwear, which affects your mechanics. Strength training does play a role into it. You need to build up the muscles in your lower leg, like your calf muscles, in order for yourself to handle the force. But if your mechanics in your foot and ankle aren't moving efficiently, then you're putting a lot more stress on your shin. And that's what leads to the shin splints. Hamstring injuries, similar thing. Like if you're overstriding, you're putting a lot more stress on your hamstrings, and it's not going to be happy, and it's going to get aggravated very quickly.
Yeah, this is like the equivalent to like deadlifting with a rounded back, right?
Exactly.
That's not an efficient way to do it. You're not loading your hips enough. You're overloading your back muscles, and then somebody tweaks their back, right?
Yeah, the structures around it can't handle that force in the like poor positioning. So something is going to happen out of it.
Let's talk about shoes.
Yeah.
That's another common question we get with runners is, what shoe should I buy?
Yeah, so one shoe does not work for everyone. Everyone will be different. A lot of it comes down to preference. However, there's two main categories of shoes. There's a neutral shoe and a stability shoe. So a stability shoe has a little bit denser foam. It's built up more in the arch area, and it's going to have a bit stiffer material in the heel part, and that's just going to help keep your foot in a straight position. So that kind of shoe is good for someone that overpronates while they're running. However, if your foot's not overpronating, or if your foot's if you're staying more on the outside of your foot while you're running, you need something called a neutral shoe, which basically means there's no extra built-in support for it. Your foot's going to stay in that neutral position, so you don't need the extra stability.
The support and stability in the arch, or arch, heel, and
It's a mix of the arch, the heel,
and the sole.
the density of the foam.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Now, first of all, how often should people be changing their shoes? Like, is there a kilometer mark? Like, how many
Yeah,
K
so
into it?
it'll differ per person, but the range we usually tell people is between 500 and 700 kilometers.
Okay.
And within that range, it'll depend specifically on what shoe you're purchasing. If it's something with softer foam, it's going to wear a little bit faster. How heavy are you running? Not necessarily the weight of your body, but are you someone that comes down with a lot more force when you run? If you can hear yourself pounding the pavement, your shoes are going to wear out a lot faster. And then also your mechanics. If you're running on the outside of your shoe, it's going to break down a lot faster than if you're landing in a neutral position on the ground. So everyone's typically within that 500 to 700 range, but specifically where you fall depends on yourself. Usually I like to tell people, if you're starting to notice aches and pains that you didn't get before, or if your running starts to feel harder in that specific pair of shoes, that probably means the shoe's dead, which is a common term in the running world. The foam's not living up to the quality it was made for.
Yeah, because I think that people underestimate how quickly you actually have to turn over your shoes, right? Because
Exactly.
500 to 700 kilometers doesn't seem right. I've seen
It's
a
not
lot of
that
people,
much,
right? It's
yeah.
not that much in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, and it'll depend how often you're running, how much you
course,
run with
yeah.
each one. If you're training for a marathon, your shoes going to wear a lot faster than if you're training for a 5 kilometer
Yeah.
race. And then people think that oh, I've only had those shoes for a year. If you're running regularly, you need to change your shoes a lot more often than
Yeah.
every year. Um, Everyone thinks running is a really cheap sport, and it is compared to other things. But if you're not buying the proper shoes, you're gonna be spending more money on like therapy to rehab from injuries. Um, you'll also have to like go make probably extra doctor's visits. It's gonna take a lot more time. But if you actually buy the shoes when you need them, you're gonna save your body, save your wallet a little bit in the long term. Yeah.
Are there any signs that people should look for on their shoes where it gives you indications of, okay, that shoe's probably going to be replaced pretty soon?
Yeah. So if you look at the bottom of your shoe, you have a bit of like a grippy pattern on it. If it's starting to get smooth, that's one sign. Or if you're noticing creases within the foam of your shoe, that means either the foam's been like really condensed. So those are like the two biggest signs. Also, if you set your shoe on the ground and it's angled, not sitting straight up, that's the third sign that I usually look for. That only happens in people that have faulty mechanics. However, like usually it's a really good sign that your shoe's worn out too much if it can't sit straight up.
Okay. That's a good tip, that last one. I didn't even think of that one.
Yeah, like if you're running on the outside of your foot, all the foam's going to be condensed on the outside, and the more it does that, the more stress that's going on the outside of your leg. Same thing, like if it's tilting in, all the foam's broken down on the inside, your foot's going to be on an angle when you're running even more.
Now, you mentioned strength training as an adjunct to training for running.
Yeah.
My experience with runners, like I was with the York track team, and they barely, the long distance runners, they
Yeah.
barely lifted any weights. Has that changed in the last, I don't know, 5 to 10 years? And what types of strength programs would you suggest for people, like let's just say they do have that pronation issue where the shoe's on an angle, or they're putting more pressure on the outside of their foot? Like, what would you recommend?
Yeah, so it has changed slightly. There are more long distance runners doing strength training. There's just more research on it about injury prevention with the strength training. However, usually it's really hard to convince runners,
Yeah.
especially longer distance runners, to do it. They're tired. They've already
Yeah.
run like 100 kilometers a week,
Yeah.
something crazy like that. They don't want to do any extra.
And they don't
work.
want to bulk up
Exactly.
because that's going to slow you down too, right?
Exactly. There's definitely people are scared to do it because they don't want to bulk up, which is not true. You're not going to bulk up with strength training. It depends on the type of training you're doing. So the best type of strength training for runners is lightweight or body weight. Especially if they're scared of that, you don't have to be doing like 300-pound deadlifts. Just focusing on like running specific movements. So unilateral single leg work. When you're running, you're pushing off one leg. You're working one leg at a time. So doing something like a squat's not the most functional activity. So usually I like to turn to things like step ups, step downs, single leg RDLs, single leg calf raises, things that are more specific to the actual activity. And again, you don't have to lift any crazy weight. Some people do, and if you're a sprinter, it's important to lift heavier and work more on power. But for long distance runners, it's more about building up the strength in your tendons, obviously your muscles, being able to focus on stability too. Stability is a major aspect, especially if you're someone that likes to run on the trails. You need to be able to balance on that uneven ground. If you step on a route, you don't want to wipe out. So working on some stability training is also part of the strength aspect.
Yeah, even like big toe, like
Yeah.
it's insane how important the big toe is,
Mm-hmm.
and it blows my mind at how many athletes, not just long distance runners or runners, but soccer players, basketball players, hockey players, their big toes just they're not strong,
They're
right?
not strong, and you can't move effectively without that strength in your toe. And again, that will lead to injuries.
Yeah.
You need to be able to push off your toe to propel yourself forwards. Without that strength, things just start to fall
Yeah,
apart.
cutting movements, even like the support of that arch and stability of that ankle, right? Like it's huge.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Do you think that's overlooked in rehab?
It's definitely overlooked. People think like more like the bigger picture. They don't think about the little intrinsic muscles that you need to focus on. I usually like to start with the smaller things and build my way up. Athletes really like to just bang out those like big strength workouts, like, oh, I'm gonna squat today, but then they don't realize that like that foot strength, the big toe strength, the arch strength, like that's all important for those bigger movements as well. So I really have to take the time to teach them the reason why we're doing it, and then they're more likely to actually listen to me and follow along with the program.
So, Hannah, this is really cool. I've actually learned a lot today. I hope people learned a lot from this too. You have so much knowledge with not only just running and running mechanics and shoes and everything that goes into that world, but just athletes in general. Where can people find you?
I mean, obviously through Elevate, but you can also find me on Instagram at HK_athletic therapy. You'll see all my reels on there. You can contact me on there. That's usually the best
Yeah,
place.
you could sign up to Hannah's newsletter. She has a newsletter,
Yes, I have a newsletter.
right? You put that out every what?
Every
2
2
weeks?
weeks.
Yeah.
Usually send it on Fridays. Right now it's more running specific, but all the things I talk about can be applied to other sports as well.
Awesome. Yeah, and in the clinic, obviously, you know, Hannah uses the Alter G. So if you want her to assess your running, assess your shoes, even, right? Give you tips on shoes. Definitely book in with Hannah. And then you're getting into some of the force plate stuff, right? Which gives you a lot
Yeah.
more nerdy numbers and all
Yes,
that.
it's
So
really cool and very nerdy, but it's definitely fun to work with.
awesome. All right, Hannah, we'll do this again
Yeah,
soon.
amazing.